Welcome, everyone. My name is Dave Chandler. I'm the Assistant Vice President of District Cash Support at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. What my office supports all of the cash operations in the 12th district. And by cash operations, I'm referring to the movement of currency and coin within the 12th district. The 12th district is the 12th. There are 12 districts in the system, the 12th being the largest system. It covers 9 western states and American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Our district also has 1/5 of the nation's population. We have 5 cash offices: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, and Seattle. And of course, Seattle, as you know, was the intended location of this conference, but we're all virtual now, and I'm glad to join you from the beautiful hills of San Mateo, California, which is where I live. So my areas of support that my office covers it covers a broad range of back office support, from data analytics, budget, compliance, strategy, communications, process improvement, and yes, business continuity. I'm happy to report that we have one of your very own DRI certified business continuity professionals running the shop here at my Reserve Bank. She and some of her business continuity colleagues in our district will be presenting a webinar through DRI later this year. So first, a little background. I'm here on behalf of the Cash Operations Group, where business continuity is a top priority. Today, I'm going to share with you some highlights of how the COVID pandemic challenged us in 2020 and to some extent continues to challenge us today, and also how our business continuity strategies prepared us not only to respond to the unfolding challenge of the pandemic, but rise to the challenge as well. And by rising to the challenge, it means that we needed to push the boundaries on agility and resiliency. And the 3 examples I'm going to talk about today briefly on agility and resiliency are protecting the safety of our employees, addressing the disruption in the coin supply chain, and reacting to an unprecedented demand for cash. So the first topic, protecting the safety of our employees, people first, which is what we say inside the bank from a strategic standpoint. The people really are first and foremost as we meet our mission. Because without the mission, without the people, there is no mission to fulfill. And there is no better way to protect our employees but by having a robust business continuity infrastructure that remains ever vigilant and watchful. And our infrastructure endeavors to stay in a proactive posture. And in doing so, I look back to the 4th quarter of 2019, from 2019 all the way through December and January and February. Our business continuity function were tracking the events out of China. We were following comments and guidance out of the CDC. We were looking internally at our supplies. We were adding to those, we were inventorying our supplies of PPE and making sure they were sufficient. We were also adding to them by looking for and adding remote thermometers for wellness checks for our employees and visitors and vendors. And rolling into March of 2020, our business continuity was in full swing. We sent most of our employees home the 1st or 2nd week of March. All the non-essential staff was sent home, and also the high-risk staff per the CDC guidelines. All the essential staff stayed on site, and that staff was our cash operations, our on-site police services, our facilities team, and our workplace services. But as March rolled into April and rolled into May, as this pandemic was deepening and broadening, one of the earliest and key strategic decisions that we made at our Reserve Bank was reorganizing those essential site operations to align with the operations in the safety group. So there was an actual reorg to all those groups that I just mentioned: cash, police, facilities, and workplace services. The reorg, so they were all within one area to increase agility, efficiency, and resiliency. But in addition to an organizational structure, there were some key areas where decisions that we made, which had our people's safety first in mind. Core operations, rewards, facilities, and a culture of care. So let me talk first about the core operations. First thing we did was assess our staff needs, and we realized that to deepen our bench, we needed to look horizontally at those individuals that perhaps were not on site from a cross training standpoint, and we asked people outside of the essential team, do you want to volunteer? Would you like to volunteer your services so we can be a little bit more agile? And that request brought in a respectable amount of resources that brought into cash on site and also offsite. We had a small cadre of data analysts from around the organization helping us with data modeling and scenario planning. We also looked at our staff needs and decided that we should probably supplement that and augment our staff by hiring some hourlies to supplement. We created some pods to reduce vector points and minimize contact tracing. We even went so far as to develop some travel contingencies should the need arise, because we were still trying to determine how many, should there be any staff become ill in a concentration of illness in a certain place. So we had logistics in place for people to travel between offices. Fortunately, we never had to rely on those, but our business continuity team were on the ready to kick that into high gear should it be needed. Another area for people first and safety is we wanted to reward those individuals on site. The decisions were made early on to provide meals for the on-site staff. We created a pop-up grocery store for staples. We even had virtual therapy because, as we all look back, this was an unusual time, and the stress levels were quite high. And like most facilities, we also changed the facility somewhat. We added plexiglass where we needed to have them. We expanded break rooms and other spaces for folks to be able to keep the pods preserved for safety reasons. And most importantly, we tried to deepen our culture of care. We had a sense of gratitude, and we celebrated and we stayed connected as much as we could across the bank. We had virtual company-wide parties. We had flexible scheduling of our frontline staff so they could easily plan their days off. We had on-site frequent COVID testings to our on-site employees. So that's a quick high level of some of the agility measures that made us more resilient and placed our employee safety at the top of our priority list. Number two, addressing the disruption of the coin supply chain. Now, I must say up front that there's a difference between a coin shortage and a supply chain disruption. So think back, if you will, in the early days of the pandemic, and when you looked at grocery store shelves and you saw empty shelves of toilet paper or eggs or flour, there really wasn't a shortage of toilet paper or eggs or flour. It's just that the supply chain was being disrupted. And so it's within that context that I use the term disruption of the supply chain. So with so many people sheltering in place and shopping online, and there were less transactions in stores. And by less transactions in stores, that means less foot traffic. And less foot traffic means that there's not a lot of coin being circulated. And in a normal environment, there's a river of coin traveling, moving every single day in this country. But the cumulative effect of the shopping online and people not moving the coin was that river turned into a bit of a stream. So what did we do in reaction to that? How did we get that stream back into a river? Well, the first thing we did was we decided to educate the public to the best we could using social media. You may have heard of our hashtag #GetCoinMoving. And in addition to that, and it worked, in addition to that social media campaign, we also partnered with some larger financial institutions to help them order appropriately for the needs of their region. And they too also tagged on to our social media campaign. And I will say anecdotally that during one weekend in April, my family and we gathered all of our coins that we've been saving for years and didn't think we'd ever roll or count. And we had more than I even imagined. We had over $1,000 And we made it a fun exercise for the family. We whoever found the oldest wheat penny got to pick the dinner delivery that night. And I'm pleased to tell you that we found a 1921 wheat penny. So our youngest picked a pizza. So that's a little side note for you. The third area for agility and resiliency pertains to how we reacted to an unprecedented demand for cash. Now, let me level set for you. Some of you may know this and some of you may not, but contrary to public perception, the Federal Reserve, we don't print money. That duty belongs to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Now, keep in mind, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, much like the Fed and much like many of you and your companies, they were also implementing social distancing and they were reacting to the pandemic as well. So they had their own internal challenges to address. But there were two dynamics converging at the same time to increase the demand for cash greatly. Number one is the Federal Reserve, as you know, is a central bank, and so our primary customers are banks. They were also kicking in all of their business continuity measures as well. And as you can imagine, what would be a normal business continuity reaction is they were also ordering up and filling up their vault a little more than normal so they could be agile and resilient. So we were meeting those demands over and above. And in addition to that higher demand of orders, there were also multiple rounds of economic impact stimulus payments that we had to react to and respond to and fund. So in response to these dynamics, we reorganized and expanded our team of highly specialized data analysts. We enhanced our data analytical tools. We added valuable dashboards to assist the decision makers with better information at the right time to make more informed and better decisions faster. The impact of this is profound. In totality, our district alone saw an increase in orders 7-fold. And we met every single order, and we could have met more. By August of 2020, total US currency in circulation over the world had reached 1.97 trillion. It's an increase to 15% over the prior year. Now, with an eye on the future, and in conclusion, there are many takeaways from this past year from a business continuity perspective. We have extremely robust business continuity plans. However, even most robust planning could not prepare any of us for 2020. But I will say, and I'm proud to say, that the muscle memory that we learned from years of business continuity planning was paid off because we were prepared to be agile and resilient. We may not have had all the answers right up front, but we knew the questions to ask and we knew who to ask them of. What we've learned will definitely inform all of our workflows, preparation, and processes going forward. So I want to thank you all for your time today. On behalf of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco and my team in District Cash Support, I'd like to welcome you all to this year's DRII virtual conference. And finally, I thank you for your dedication, especially as we live through this history together. Thank you all. Enjoy the conference.
Hello, everyone. My name is Avishay Ben-Barak, and I am the Global Business Continuity Manager for AMDOCS. Over the next few minutes, I want to share some of my personal learnings and observations from the past year, which helped us respond and will improve us going forward. The first major characteristic, in my opinion, of COVID-19 is its global footprint. And when you pair that with the fact that we are a global organization with over 25,000 employees scattered across 85 plus locations, you can imagine that that comes with a fair amount of challenges and opportunities. One of the key components in our effective response has to do with our early detection. At AMDOCS, we have a program in which we monitor globally 24/7 events that could potentially become business continuity incidents. Once we identify such an event, we trigger our emergency advisory system, which indicates the set of required actions that we need to take in order to deal with the potential implications of that particular event. This process enabled us to detect COVID very early on, when it was limited to China, and to start our preparations accordingly. We then had the opportunity to quickly make necessary adjustments to our plan and even to test them on a large scale. We then continued implementing the same process over and over again throughout our different locations as the pandemic moved to the West. The second global characteristic was finding the right balance between corporate and local leadership. On the one hand, you want to be able to make quick and efficient decisions, and you also strive to be consistent. On the other hand, in order to successfully implement these decisions, they must be aligned with local leaders, take into consideration cultural aspects, and the crisis communication in many cases also needs to be adapted to those local populations. Another key observation is that we need to put much more emphasis on building our incident management capabilities. In my opinion, the first step is to have a mature incident command structure, which was crucial for us in executing our plan effectively. Our structure is also dynamic, which allowed us to expand and reduce the teams according to the needs of the incident. This enabled us to effectively make decisions while not creating unnecessary workload for less essential participants. The next step is to build the incident command capabilities among all the team members. Here, of course, we need to constantly train and test our plans. However, the best learning comes from real events, and we need to find a way to preserve as much as possible the knowledge and the capabilities we accumulated over the last year. We are accomplishing that by conducting lessons learned, adapting our plans, and restructuring our testing and training programs. Lastly, but perhaps most importantly, in my opinion, is that we as business continuity professionals need to position ourselves as organizational crisis leaders. To achieve this goal, I've built a program for our team that focuses on developing 3 key incident command capabilities. The first one is decision-making under pressure. So how do we deal with the negative emotions of a crisis? How do we deal with the time pressure? How do we deal with the lack of information? The second capability is sense-making, the ability to quickly make sense of the event. What does the event mean? What should I do relative to the event? What should the other people in the other command centers and teams do? And to answer these questions in a way that leads to credible action. The third capability is organizational IQ. Each business continuity professional, in my opinion, has to have thorough knowledge of all aspects of the business. And they need that in order to understand the business impact. They need that in order to complete the resource need assessment. And I think the pinnacle of this capability is to understand the perspective and the motivations of all of the different crisis stakeholders. And once you do that, you can effectively lead the organization towards the end goal. As business continuity professionals, we often end up creating or facilitating drills. And as a result, we don't train ourselves enough. Therefore, I decided to start conducting short simulation-based training on a bi-monthly basis that trains our internal business continuity teams. I have much more information that I will be happy to share offline to anybody who wants to reach out. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that to see you face to face very soon.
Hi, this is Kristina, Cory with AT&T. For AT&T, planning for and responding to contingencies is a way of life. The COVID-19 pandemic impacted every aspect of society, and AT&T was certainly no exception. This pandemic affected all areas of our business, from our frontline retail and field teams to construction and engineering teams to HR, customer care centers, and our network support teams. We have a team of experienced business continuity experts and extensive experience in planning for and responding to a wide variety of situations, from hurricanes and floods to winter weather and power outages, and even communicable infectious diseases. In 2020, AT&T was ranked third by Forbes in their top 100 employers' response to the pandemic. Our success was largely attributed to the following. AT&T closely monitors health outbreak developments by our local staff and health authorities. We have response plans in place to take appropriate steps to continue to maintain delivery of customer service while considering and addressing the needs of our employees, our company, and their families. Additionally, through our business continuity planning program, AT&T maintains a communicable infectious disease response plan. In late 2019, due to the potential for regional pandemic, certain components of the plan were activated to safeguard our employees and customers abroad. And as the scope of the pandemic reached global proportions, the plan components were adjusted and implemented globally. AT&T's communicable infectious disease plan includes an established cross-functional team comprised of operational organizations, which include human resources, legal, labor relations, procurement, property management, logical security, environment, health, and safety, among others, and each played a critical role in our response. The framework under which we operate for events is flexible and supported the augmented needs during the COVID-19 global pandemic, which allowed the company to remain operational. Throughout this event, AT&T has and continues to maintain close links with federal, state, and local government agencies, health authorities, and medical experts. We also incorporated external advice and guidance to expand upon our existing response plan approach. In managing an event of this magnitude, a variety of strategies and contingencies are leveraged depending upon the work function, risk factor, location, and customer interaction protocol, with the focus always on the safety and well-being of our employees, customers, and the communities we serve. Upon initial notification of the COVID-19 global pandemic outbreak in the Asia-Pacific region, AT&T activated the Corporate Event Management Response Team. This core cross-functional team manages events that have potential to impact employee health and safety and business operations for a wide variety of events. As there were corporate-wide strategic decisions that required top executive-level engagement, the COVID-19 global pandemic was the first event that necessitated the activation of the AT&T Executive Command Council. This Executive Command Council is comprised of officers across all business units, and their direct engagement enabled quick response. Through daily sessions, decisions reached included establishing guidelines and provisions for business travel by employees, work-from-home provisions for all work functions approved, human resource policy considerations, and long-term operational strategies for business activities, all while continuing to manage the business on a day-to-day basis while also experiencing a growing demand on our network. Additionally, our retail, customer care, and field team operations protocols were quickly revised to ensure alignment and support of state and local executive orders, and also ensuring the safety and well-being of our frontline team members. Work-from-home arrangements are also a key component of our response plan. For the COVID-19 global pandemic, these arrangements were implemented initially for pre-approved and previously equipped employee groups. However, additional provisions became necessary to further our social distancing solutions in staff work locations and fleet management, resulting in larger work-from-home eligible groups. Our human resources team maintained and administered human resource policies for our employees. These policies included COVID-19 paid time off, quarantine and sick leave parameters, in addition to a recognition component for employees who continue to display tireless and effortless engagement in the company's frontline response. Our property management teams were faced with new challenges for staff work locations, including retail and customer service locations and warehouses and garages. Locations that remained staffed quickly implemented proactive and reactive disinfecting protocol processes. These included increased frequency cleaning for high touch points, common areas, and individual employee workspaces. Signage was also installed in AT&T managed facilities, notifying occupants of accessible workspace, social distancing protocols, and availability of provided personal protective equipment, including face coverings and hand sanitizers. Our procurement team faced a number of challenges as well and resolved significant issues related to the limited availability of personal protective equipment. Consistent with the Center for Disease Control recommendations, alternate disinfecting solutions and face coverings were procured and distributed. This procurement process was operationalized, and the personal protective equipment and disinfecting solutions continue to be utilized today. As the local health authorities became overloaded with community outbreak cases, AT&T established an internal employee triage process. This process included establishing a team of subject matter experts to appropriately triage each case reported. The team included representatives from the impacted business unit, human resources, environment, health and safety, property management, and our global emergency management center team. The team considered risk factors including workplace exposure, customer exposure, additional cleaning requirements, and HR policy applicability for each employee case. And from a customer and external support perspective, AT&T supported various communities that experienced local impacts due to the COVID-19 global pandemic. AT&T is committed to service quality, and we offer a wide variety of business continuity services designed to help facilitate the continuous operation and availability of customers' critical business processes, applications, data, work centers, and networks. These products and services were consistently delivered to meet the ever-changing needs of our customers as they too were faced with changing their business operating models and staffing plans. These efforts included committing $5.5 million to support first responders, medical personnel, and others in need, providing more than 25 million meals while working with Feeding America, the Salvation Army, Team Rubicon, and World Central Kitchen. And in May of 2020, AT&T launched the AT&T Summer Learning Academy to help students located everywhere in the world when they were faced with an environment in which internships were no longer available. AT&T offered a free, self-paced online learning program which was intended to provide an opportunity for students to continue to grow and prepare for a life after graduation. The curriculum included professional development and business acumen coursework with a focus on long-term and future benefits. AT&T expanded its Access program as well, which provides internet access at $10 a month for limited income households, and offered free service for new eligible customers participating in the National School Lunch Program and Head Start. And finally, AT&T pledged to keep Americans connected by waiving late payments and not disconnecting consumers because of an inability to pay caused by COVID-19 economic hardships for a specified time frame. Ultimately, our overall preparedness approach and active leadership engagement at all levels allows AT&T to continue to remain in a strong position of preparedness.
Hello, I'm Eric McNulty, the Associate Director of the National Preparedness Leadership Initiative. We're a joint program of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and the Center for Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And for the last almost 20 years, we have been studying leaders in crisis situations. Small crises, large crises, long duration crises, and certainly COVID-19 has been the longest duration crisis that we have seen. And so the topic of resilience is so important because when you're thinking about a crisis that unfolds not just over hours and days, but months, and we're going into the second year now, you're really got to be thinking about how do you keep your team, yourself, and your communities stronger longer. And so this notion of resilience is so important. And when I talk about resilience, we tend to think about bouncing forward, not bouncing back, because there really is no back. Clocks don't go backwards, calendars don't go backwards. We are bouncing forward. And when people can bounce forward with confidence, with hope in the future, that's when you see resilience. And so the question becomes, how do you lead through that? And what we've really taken a deep dive into during the coronavirus pandemic has been looking at the temporal aspects of leadership, or how do you work with time? And a tool we started developing initially during the 2017 hurricane season, when you may recall we had multiple hurricanes, one right after the other, and people had to sort of sift through and be able to pivot from now till the next to the one after that. We started working with this tool, but it really came into its own over the last year. And I want to walk you through what we call the arcs of time, which is a way to help leaders better understand and to visualize and conceptualize the different phases of a crisis so that they can be taking appropriate action, not just today, but thinking forward and leading toward the next phase and the one after that. So here's a simple arc. Every crisis has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're going to go, we hope, from an undesirable current state to a more desirable future state. That's going to take a certain amount of time and effort. And so as a leader, you'll be thinking about what's the duration? How long is this crisis going to be? And what actions can I take that may be able to shorten it? And then how bad will the impact be? Again, are there things I can do that will flatten that curve, a phrase that we heard way too much at the beginning of 2020. But how do I bring that arc down, and how do I shorten it to minimize the impact on the population? But in a long duration crisis like this one, there isn't one arc, there are multiple arcs. And so you've also got to be thinking about how do you transition to the next one. And one of the important things we found about leading is that you're not just worried about today, but you have to be anticipating what's going to come next. Only then can you ready yourself, your system, your team to be able to take the right steps, have the right resources available so that you can move things forward. You're thinking about pace. How do you pace yourself through this event so you can keep people stronger longer? You'll have enough gas in the tank, as it were, to make it all the way through. So when you're leading through the arcs, the first thing you want to do is define the apex. What's the threat for your organization, for your community? Is it actually the virus? Is it, in this case, the number, is it the inability to vaccinate people? Is it the threat to the economy, being able to get people to work, kids to school? Whatever it is, define what that apex is likely to be. In the beginning, when that threat is accelerating and coming up, you're going to be very transaction focused. What can I do right away? How do I engage people, get resources put forward in a productive manner? It's very much transaction focused. And one of the challenges, as we've seen, is that leaders can tend to get stuck here. So they're always doing transactions. But the pivot you have to make is moving from transaction to transformation, because that if you begin to meet that crisis at its peak and be able to bring it down, bring it under control, then you're going to be changing. You're going to have to change your organization, how you work. You'll have learned some things. The reality you're working in will be a little bit different. And so you're going to be transformation focused. You've got to be able to think, again, as a leader, thinking, how are we going to do things differently? What else are we going to need? What are the implications for the other parts of the enterprise? And then as you begin to end one arc and come into the second one or the third one or the fourth one, you'll be transition focused. What do we need to do to continue what's happening now until its conclusion, but at the same time, simultaneously ramp up the next arc? We're seeing that challenge right now with the vaccine rollout, where even though we've been talking about vaccines for months now, too many states here in the US anyway, didn't have things in place to be able to handle the vaccination. So we're looking at shortages of vaccinators. We're looking at confusion over how you sign up. Where is it going to be administered? These were all things we should have been thinking about and planning for, yet if leaders get stuck in that transaction phase, they never begin to think about the transition to the next phase. And so as a leader, the more you can be looking forward, the better prepared you're going to be. So again, this is a tool which we were developing, and we've seen people really grab onto it and use it during this crisis, which is why I wanted to share it with you today. And I just wanted to share with you quickly some of what we saw we forecasted a best case and a worst case back in mid-April, which this will show you how you can use this tool and where it can be effective. So as the best case rolls out here, you can imagine you identify the vaccine, you deploy your PPE, your respirators, people are masking up, they're using social distancing, and terrific. As you go over, you see each arc gets smaller, you're able to reopen schools. Even when new cases emerge, you're able to handle it because you've got capacity in the system, and all the way you're able to get to a next normal relative, by summer of this year. By contrast, here's the worst case. And I'm sad to say that if we've watched this roll out, we were much more accurate with the worst case than we were with the best case. And you can see here, each arc is getting higher. The duration of the pandemic is pulling out. You're seeing that the healthcare system is stressed. The civil society begins to show stress. We saw that with the social justice riots over this past summer, and then into the activities in the fall, and most recently around the inauguration. You see things getting worse and worse. And as a leader, what you want to be thinking about is, where are the decision points here? Where are the levers I can pull to get me not to that worst case outcome, but to that best case? And by mapping them out over time and looking at it, again, it gives you a way of visualizing what's happening and thinking about how you can work with time to get as close to that best possible outcome as possible. So as you're thinking about your resilience and that of your team and your community going forward, be thinking about time and how you work with it, the impact you can have on it, how you can speed things up, slow things down, because in the end, those will be critical to maintaining resilience. Thank you so much for your time today. You can see our website here on my final slide. You can find more information there about the arcs of time. I hope you find this useful, and thank you very much.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining to hear about Transunion's pandemic response. My name is Deb Ladendorf, and I manage our issue management program. And I'm sure we could all spend days talking about our experiences over the past year, and I'm sure that would probably be a healthy to do. But today I'm going to try to distill our story into 5 minutes or so. So let's jump right in. I want to begin my presentation by providing a little background about Transunion and the foundation on which our pandemic response was built. And that's our approach to using information for good. So who are we and what do we do? Well, Transunion is a global information and insights company that makes trust possible by ensuring each person is reliably yet safely represented in the marketplace. So our solutions help consumers understand and protect their personal information and also monitor and manage their credit. And for businesses, we help them better assess and manage risk. So our tools allow our customers to make smarter decisions and have greater certainty around who they are doing business with. As a result, businesses and consumers can transact with confidence and achieve great things. Our solutions result in economic opportunity, great experiences, and personal empowerment, for hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And that's what we call information for good. So information for good drives us every day at TransUnion. And our program relies on and leverages information on over 8,000 associates in 75 locations scattered across 22 countries. Given the complexity of our global footprint and our dispersed workforce, we have long invested in a robust issue management program to help us manage challenges affecting our business. Our program, I'm sure, is very similar to your programs, except for maybe the data issue response planning that we do, just due to the nature of our business, and perhaps where our business continuity function reports up into the organization. We sit in TransUnion's compliance function. So naturally, we have a very policy-driven program, which requires crisis management plans for each of our locations and business continuity plans for our critical functions. And all teams go through their annual preparedness exercises. And I'm sure this is all very familiar to you. But where I think we really got lucky was in 2019. We had just exercised a pandemic scenario with our senior leaders at our largest call center. And we had just implemented a BIA refresh where we captured a lot more information that we found vital to our pandemic response. So we were lucky in those respects. And then shortly following the end of 2019, we also implemented a threat monitoring tool, which we found really helped our response in that we were able to receive alerts from across the globe on all the pandemic information that was going on in each of the individual jurisdictions. So that was really helpful. And then the other thing that really assisted us was that we have an operation in Hong Kong. So we had a preview of what was to come. So when the pandemic actually began, we were prepared. And we're now going on almost a year of activation of nearly 300 business continuity plans with no major disruption to our operations. So I wanted to share with you today the actions that made the biggest difference to our response. So the first action was that we prioritized our people and their health. Very early in the pandemic, we set our guiding principles for our response with the health of our people, their families, and our communities where we live as our top response priority. And then we transitioned 95% of our global workforce to a work from home solution within 1 week. And then for that 5% of essential workforce that still had to work from an office, we did enhance the safety and health protocols for those employees who remained on site. And then we also worked to ensure our company remained a source of stability and support for our employees, providing additional resources for mental and physical health, enhancing our backup childcare benefits, conducting trainings on topics like remote work and resilience. And of course, we did the fun things too. We had Friday lunch DJ sessions, and we had our executives actually do story hour with the children of our employees, gave the parents a break. And then we have our whole series of yoga and exercise classes that we're able to attend via video. So that helped maintain our sense of community. Second, we activated clear and effective governance. So we had our crisis management plans and we leveraged those to activate an executive steering committee to help make prompt decisions, to liaise with the board of directors and external stakeholders. And we also activated our corporate response team, who's accountable for the day-to-day actions of our response. And then we determined that we needed more help, and we actually activated all of our local crisis management teams to create a global network of office leads to coordinate across the enterprise. The third thing that we did was we really dialed up our communication and listening. We communicated a range of information about health, business, policy, and technology topics via a dedicated intranet site for all of our COVID response information. And then we also sought input frequently, so that intranet site was kind of static. So we created a special mailbox to receive input and questions. And to date, we've fielded about 600 questions and follow-ups and various responses to surveys. So we found that very valuable. And then the next thing that we thought was helpful to us is that we developed a data-driven return to office strategy. So we'll base our return to the offices on data-driven criteria that prioritize safety. And we developed technology tools in-house to track our key readiness metrics for each of our locations and to manage the number of people in each office at any given time. So those tools we're using today, because most of our people are still working from home. And the last thing that we found helped us is that we leveraged guidance from the public and private sector health authorities and input from our networks. So we tapped into all of the reliable resources of intelligence and information and really leaned on our membership in our private public sector alliance in Chicago, and that group is called Chicago First. And that gave us a nice opportunity to be able to speak with the public sector health authorities directly, and to also network with other businesses within the Chicago land area and to understand what issues they were facing and what were some of their best practices. So we leveraged that relationship heavily. And if you're not currently a member of such a public-private sector partnership, I would suggest that you seek out membership in one of those networks, because it really helps to have the ear of the public sector authorities. So based on all of the actions that we've taken, the impact to Transunion was that we remained open. While some business came to a halt, we actually experienced a significant uptick in consumer and customer needs due to the economic impact of COVID, not the health impact. So thanks to our preparedness, our response enabled continuous operations with no major disruption. The second thing is that our people are demonstrating resilience. We've done multiple pulse surveys to understand their sentiments. And one of the key findings from one of the surveys was that 97% of our employees said that they have confidence in the business, and they had positive comments about how leadership had handled the crisis. The other thing that we found is that if you're going to include questions in your pulse surveys, be sure that you're able to act upon them. So currently, we heard that there's a broad interest in continuing to work from home even after the pandemic. So right now we are working on developing our strategy for what TransUnion is going to look like once the pandemic is over. So we're working on that strategy based on feedback we received from our associates. But in the meantime, the associates also said they needed better equipment at home. So we got that feedback, and we were able to set up a portal and give a stipend for people to get the equipment they needed to work effectively at home. So the pulse surveys really help to understand how your people are doing, and they give you some direction on what things that you need to plan for in the future. And lastly, one of the outcomes of the response is that we're still able to help our communities. We focus on providing insights and education to people, businesses, and governments to help everyone navigate this uncertain time. And in the US, we're even providing consumers with free weekly credit reports. And then just recently, we announced a partnership with AMDOCS and VantageScore, where we did a series of educational videos that are on CNN. And we're using that to educate consumers on the economic impacts of COVID. So finally, our lessons learned, the first one was always put your people first. While this isn't a new concept or a lesson learned for TU, the pandemic certainly validated it like never before. TransUnion's response to the pandemic has given us the opportunity to walk the talk of our corporate values. The next thing that we learned is that investing in preparedness pays off. It's no small effort to maintain over 300 plans, require 700 exercises annually, prepare leaders across 75 offices to navigate a crisis. And we really only have 2 full-time people dedicated to business continuity at TransUnion. So our multi-year investment in business continuity management systems and tools and training has realized its full ROI during this event. And having all the information we needed at our fingertips made a big difference in being able to make quick decisions when we needed to make those decisions. And then the last thing I wanted to share was that you really need to tap into the front lines for help. With only 2 people dedicated to business continuity in our corporate office, we found that asking for help really helped us navigate through the pandemic. So while it was far from our first crisis, it's the first one that has been truly global, with impact to all of our people and all of our offices. So we realized early that we needed to supplement our corporate response team by engaging and empowering our local crisis management leads. So building that network out in the field and training them and having them ready really pays off. So when you need them, you can ask for their support. So that's an overview of our pandemic response in a nutshell. So thank you for listening. and stay well.